We've got a major American city in open defiance of the federal government, and it's sparking a fight that could literally shut down the entire Department of Homeland Security. So we're going to break down exactly how a local order in New York City has exploded into a full-blown national crisis.
And really, this whole thing boils down to one huge question of power. When a city's rules go head-to-head with federal law, who actually gets to make the final call?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the sanctuary order itself. Then, we'll get into the pretty explosive language coming from both sides. After that, we'll connect the dots to a potential government shutdown. And finally, we'll unpack that core power struggle at the heart of it all. So let's start right at the source of all this tension. A brand new executive order in New York City that basically puts it on a collision course with federal immigration agents. It's a classic sanctuary city policy, and it's all about limiting how much the city cooperates with national immigration enforcement. So this order basically does three big things. First, it tells Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, that they now need a judicial warrant, which is an order signed by a judge, before they can even set foot on city property. The city says this is all about building trust with immigrant communities. What's really key here is where this applies. We're talking about sensitive places like hospitals, schools, and shelters. And finally, the order makes every single city agency go back and make sure their own rules are in line with these sanctuary laws.
So, you might be asking, why would the city make such a bold move? Well, to really get their side of it, you have to hear the powerful language the mayor himself is using.
And wow, the language here is intense. Mayor Zohran Mamdani isn't just talking about policy disagreements. He's straight up accusing ICE of being a rogue agency that tramples on the Constitution and terrorizes people. This quote really shows you just how deep the city's opposition runs.
Okay, so when a city throws down a gauntlet like that, you know Washington is going to hit back hard. And they did. Here's how the federal government is framing this.
The Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, came back with an equally fiery accusation. They're basically saying this order isn't protecting anyone. Instead, it's creating a shield for dangerous criminals, which lets them commit more crimes and hurt more innocent people. So you see, we have two totally opposite reads on the very same policy.
And to back this up, DHS dropped a pretty shocking number on the table. Over 7,000. So who exactly are these people, and why is the federal government so worried about them?
Now, DHS says this isn't just some random statistic. It represents more than 7,000 non-citizens that ICE wants to detain who are already in custody somewhere in New York State. And the agency's making it very clear these are people with minor violations. They say the criminal records here include incredibly serious crimes like homicide, assault, and even sexual predatory offenses.
And get this isn't just a New York City thing. The mayor's order dropped just a week after New York's governor proposed a similar ban on local police cooperating with ICE for the entire state. This shows it's part of a much wider, coordinated pushback against federal immigration enforcement.
And this fight, which started on a local and state level, is now blowing up into a massive battle right in the heart of Washington, D.C.
So how does a local city rule suddenly threaten to shut down a whole federal department? Well, this dispute has become a major roadblock in the national budget talks, and it's threatening to cut the funding for the very agency at the center of this firestorm, the Department of Homeland Security.
So in these high-stakes negotiations, you've got both sides painting a very different picture. The Republican take is that Democrats are suddenly making ridiculous demands and are using all this chaos as a political weapon. Meanwhile, Republicans are trying to frame themselves as the party of adults, the ones who are just trying to do the responsible thing and keep the government's lights on.
So what's really on the line here? Well, if they can't make a deal, funding for the entire Department of Homeland Security could just stop. And that means the paychecks for thousands of essential workers, we're talking everyone from TSA agents at the airport to the Coast Guard out on the water, would be at risk.
All right, so we've looked at the city's order, the federal government's reaction, and how this whole thing could lead to a shutdown. Let's boil it all down to what's really going on at the very center of this showdown.
What this really comes down to are two completely different, totally irreconcilable ways of looking at the world. On one side, you have New York City saying its job is to protect its residents and their constitutional rights. And to do that, it has to resist what it calls a rogue agency. But on the other side, the federal government says its fundamental duty is to enforce the country's immigration laws, keep the public safe, and remove criminals. And that leaves us with the big, messy question at the heart of our entire system of government. Where exactly is the line?
Where does the city's power to protect its own people end, and the federal government's power to enforce the law of the land begin?